Hello everyone, it is I, Mark S.W. Welcome back to my channel. It's summertime, it's incredibly hot. Hope you guys are keeping cool. I've had to open the windows, so if you hear cars going by, I apologise, there's nothing I can do about it. Now for this summer, I've got a series of special videos planned. Now as you all know, I'm a massive Gerry Anderson fan, and I love the model effects in his shows. Everything done by Steve Begg, Brian Johnson, and the legendary Derek Meddings, who went on to do the model effects for many films and TV shows. Of course, these days people use CGI, which is all very well, but I don't know, models are more fun to play with. I know some people who want to do their own model shots for their own film projects. They've even asked me to help. So what I thought I'd do is a series of videos showing you how you can do your own model shots even if you don't have lots of money. So welcome to my first episode of Model Shots on a Low Budget. And in episode 1 we'll be looking at building the models. So if you're interested and want to do your own model shots, then subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload the next model making videos. So like I said, this episode will focus on building the models. We're mainly looking at vehicles and buildings. Now before you begin, you need to understand how the size system works. See, most models that you see on films and TV shows are made for model railways. When it comes to sizes, they use a system called the gauge system. Whereas with model kits like Airfix, they use scale systems, so they would have the number 1, then a colon, and then the size number. FYI, 1 to 1 means it's life size. Now the standard size for model railways would be the 00 gauge, which for model kits, it's roughly between 72 to 76. But I've prepared a little demonstration to help you guys understand how the scales work. You see, I have the plastic model kits of Thunderbirds 1, 2 and 3. So first of all, let's take a look at Thunderbirds 1 and 3. Now in real life, Thunderbird 1 is 90 feet high. As for Thunderbird 3, 287 feet high. But as you can see, they're done to the same size. That's because they've been done to different scales. See, Thunderbird 1 is scaled to 144. Thunderbird 3 is scaled to 350. If Thunderbird 1 was going to be scaled to 350, it would be about this big. As for Thunderbird 2, in real life it would be 250 feet long. So it's slightly smaller than Thunderbird 3, but it's close enough for Thunderbird 2 to be done to the same scale size, 350. And it's the same with the other model kits you get in the Thunderbird franchise. You can get a model Thunderbird 4 scaled to 64, and there's the mold scaled to 72, and Thunderbird 1's launch bay hangar, which is scaled to 350. So the larger the scale size number, the smaller the model. And the bigger the model, the more detailing you can add to it. Which is why sometimes it's a good idea to have the same vehicle in different sizes. So you have small, medium, large, and sometimes extra large for the really close-up shots. So now you understand how the scale size works, you can start designing your model, vehicle, or building. So always do lots of planning first and do lots of sketches and drawings so you know what the final result would look like. Now if you're going to build an existing vehicle, you need to find lots of videos and photos of that vehicle in question so you can study it and get the detailing right. So for example, I've done 2 vehicles from Thunderbirds. I've done the Hood's Cruiser from the CGI remake, and the Sunprobe rocket from the original series. Of course, you can also make your own version of a vehicle, like this model of Red Dwarf I made. Because if you think about it, there are 4 different versions of Red Dwarf, so I've tried to do something that's something close to the original Red Dwarf, with maybe a hint of new versions in it. But even if it's not 100% accurate, it still looks like Red Dwarf. It's recognizable. Now when you've done all your drawings and you're happy with the final design of your vehicle or building, you now need to get some equipment ready. You'll need stationary equipment, so that's things like pens, pencils, rulers, protractors, compass, all the stuff you need for school really. You'll need cutting equipment, so scissors, a carving knife, some pliers, and maybe a small drill. Joining equipment, so that's super glue, PVA glue, plastic glue, milliput, and screws. And of course you'll also need painting equipment because you want to give your models a coat of paint. I tend to use the paints used by Warhammer, the Games Workshop paints. Other equipment you'll need some tweezers for picking up those little itty bitty teeny weeny parts, and motor powered tools for when you're doing things like cutting, drilling, carving, or sanding. Now, I'm not going to do a step-by-step video on how to build a model because it varies, but I can give you some advice in building your models. For a start, the materials used. So starting with paper. Yes, it's a weak material, but it can be useful for things like making paper models for prototypes. You can also use paper for printing out things like patterns or signs or nameplates for your vehicles or locations. The next material is paper card, which is stronger than normal paper. Again, it's used for making prototype models, and I've used it to make some background scenery like skyscrapers and other buildings like this one. The third material is cardboard. Now there's all kinds of cardboard. I tend to use the one that you get with cereal boxes. It's nice and light and strong. The only thing is, when you fold it, the folding line is not very discreet. It's very visible. Also, it's not waterproof, so if you're going to do model shots that involve water, best to avoid it. I tend to use the cardboard for making models that I don't want to keep. I want to maybe damage or destroy. Next material is wood, which is nice and strong. You can get it in various sizes and thicknesses, usually at your local DIY shop. But you will need strong cutting tools in order to cut the shapes out. So if you're going to use wood, you're going to need the more powerful cutting tools first. The next material is plastic. Like wood, it comes in various thicknesses, but like cardboard, it's nice and light and easy to use. The good make is by Evergreen. They do all kinds of sheets of plastic. They've even done like long bits like tubes, pipes, little edge pieces, which is good for like joining panels together. This is my favorite material to use, but keep in mind it does burn easily, so if you're going to use plastic models and you're going to use fire in your model effects, do be careful. Especially if you want to keep the model, you don't want it to burn away. The final material is resin, which is a type of plastic that's used mainly in 3D printing. You see, if you have problems trying to build your model from scratch because it's got very complex shapes, an easy idea is to build your model on CGI construction software. So things like Autodesk Maya or Blender. Then you can print them out as 3D models. Now, if you haven't got a 3D printer, don't worry. There are people that do have 3D printers, and for a reasonable price, they will print out your model. And it's not that expensive, to be honest. It just depends on how big you want your model to be, and if you want more than one printed. Of course, if you're building vehicles, you can use model kits of other vehicles to put your vehicle together. So you could take 3 jet fighters, they're all different, take the main body of one, the wings from the second, and the engine from the third, put them together, and you have some futuristic aircraft. This technique can also be used for the other vehicles, so ground vehicles, boats, spacecraft, submarines. It's an endless list. Of course, when it comes to ground vehicles, most model ground vehicles in kits, they don't have wheels that turn. The wheels are just fixed on. So a simple solution is to buy toy cars, buses, lorries, trucks. because their wheels do turn. It's a simple solution. What you can do is also repaint them so they look like real vehicles and not toys. So I've taken this lorry and its tanker, repainted it so it looked more like a real tanker, and added some extra details, and of course the wheels turn, so that's no problem. Now here's a little tip. If you want to use a car that looks like a car in the real world, then the best option is to use cars from Matchbox, because most of their ground vehicles look like real life ground vehicles, the ones you get in the real world. A lot of people would say, well, why not use cars from Hot Wheels? Well, you can, but consider this though. Most of the cars designed by Hot Wheels look more futuristic, because you've got to admit, some of their cars look like they're from the far future, so you can always repaint them to look like a very futuristic car. It's really up to you, but when you are designing vehicles, have a think about how they're going to move. Now with cars and other ground vehicles, it's easy, you can just push them along. Or the traditional method is to add a bit of string to them, usually fishing wire or the type of wire that's used for sewing, because it's hard to see them. Sometimes you might need two wires, one to control the left and the other controls the right, but with the smaller models you probably only need one string, and then you can just pull it along. Now not only will this work with wheeled vehicles, but it will also work with hovercrafts. But keep in mind, most toy hovercrafts have wheels attached, so you need to try and find a way of concealing the wheels so we don't see them, or maybe take the wheels off, because hovercrafts don't use wheels. As for vehicles with caterpillar tracks, this is kind of difficult, because most toys and model vehicles with caterpillar tracks, they don't tend to turn, they're just stuck on, or they're just plastic. There are some toys and models of vehicles with caterpillar tracks that do move. Usually the tracks are made of rubber, like this one here. But you have to keep in mind that when trying to move them along, sometimes the tracks don't move, they're just sort of stuck. You need a tracked vehicle where the tracks are more flexible. To give an example, I've got the Shadow mobile control from UFO. This is the die-cast metallic model. And the caterpillar tracks are very loose and flexible, so see how smooth they move along? So if you're going to use a caterpillar tracked vehicle, make sure the tracks are almost like this, loose and flexible, can easily move when you push it along, even gently. Of course, pulling the vehicle along on a string, that's easy if you want your vehicle to travel in a straight line. But if you want your vehicle to turn, that's a bit tricky. This is why people use radio control vehicles to get them to move the way they want them to. In fact, going back to what I said about caterpillar tracked vehicles, most RC vehicles with tracks do move. That's why sometimes it's better to use them than rather use a toy. Of course, if you know anything about robotics or electronics, you can always buy RC vehicles, modify them to look like what you want them to look like, and use them for your model shots. But if you don't know anything about electronics, then you'll have to use one of several methods to turn your vehicles. One idea is to attach a magnet in your vehicle, and then with another magnet underneath the scenery, you can then pull it along and the vehicle will go wherever you control the magnet. The second method is you cut grooves along your scenery, attach your vehicle to a long pole, and then you can just pull it along, almost like a manual control Scalextric. The third option is stop motion animation. That's where you move your vehicle slightly. You need a lot of patience to do this one though. For moving flying vehicles like this jet fighter, it's a little bit different and can be a bit difficult sometimes, because instead of one wire you need two wires to fly your aircraft. One at the front, one at the back, so then you can decide whether it's climbing or diving. You also need maybe two more wires on the wings so it can fly port or starboard. But the difficulty is trying to attach the wires to the aircraft in a way that makes them discreet, because if the viewers can see them, then it just ruins that sort of sense of reality. Another way of making flying vehicles fly is that sometimes they have tubes built into them. Just here, you see? What you do is you feed 2 bits of wire through those tubes, and then your vehicle can slide from one side to the other. Keep in mind that the larger your flying vehicle, the more difficult it is to fly it, because with the wires you need them to be thin but strong enough to take the weight. But there are other ways to make your vehicles fly if you can't use string, which I'll get to in a future video. So that's enough of the vehicles. Moving on to buildings, there are model kits you can get of buildings. Most of them are old-fashioned buildings, because remember, most model kits are made for model railways. It's very rare to get hold of more modern or futuristic buildings as model kits, but some of them do exist. Just remember to check the sizes. There are 2 model companies I recommend for getting model building kits. The first company is Metcalfe, which is ideal for past and near present day buildings. So for example, like this signal box I used in my Halloween video a couple of years ago. See? As well as railway buildings, they do other things like houses, pubs, farms, old factories, even a castle. The other brand I recommend is TT Combat. All their models are made out of a special wood which is easy to cut. So here's one of their examples of a building. They do a lot of modern day and futuristic buildings, so things like skyscrapers, spaceports, refineries, nuclear power stations. They even do some vehicles. I do confess, these models do show the joint landings. See there? Where you put each panel in place. But apart from those, it's a nice and easy model kit to play with and put together. You only need PVA glue. You don't need super glue. Of course, whether you're building a vehicle or a building, sometimes you don't need kits. You can use bits and bobs. I mean, we're all familiar with the lemon squeezer in Thunderbird 1's launch bay. When it comes to bits and bobs, it's an endless list. You can use whatever you can find around the house, like bits of old Lego bricks, sort of pen lids, and some tubes and pipes, toothpicks, biscuit trays. Use your imagination. I'll show you some examples. So here's one with some cardboard, wood, plastic, and bits of string. I've built one of those old-fashioned elevators that you get at mine shafts. How cool is that? I've also made this, which is a fence. It could be an electric fence, perhaps. I've used the mesh from table tennis. I've also done this. I've taken a polystyrene ball and I've turned it into an atomic reactor, like the one in the Thunderbirds episode, The Mighty Atom. So I've added bits of plastic. I've also cut it in half so I can add a plastic circle, bits of wood underneath, and this top bit from an old wheel. I have one advice though: if you're going to use polystyrene, make sure you cover it in PVA glue or papier-mâché first. I'll explain why later in this video. And of course you can use other bits and bobs from other model kits, like this piece here. Now this is part of a girder bridge for a model railway. I think some say it was by Airfix, some say by DePaul. First made in the 1950s. However, this piece has been used in many Gerry Anderson shows. It's been in nearly all vehicles and complexes. It gets everywhere. In fact, guys, if you're interested, there's a YouTuber called Mattline1967. He's done lots of videos showing what parts from model kits have been used in Gerry Anderson shows and also in other films. he's also a very talented artist. He's made these beautiful artworks of vehicles from various films and TV shows. And he's also done a series of videos of what if they came out as model kits. So we could have model kits of the flying saucers from the 1950 films, or the Iron Mole from the Peter Cushing movie At the Earth's Core. We've got all 4 passenger aircraft from the Airport Disaster movie franchise, and my personal favourite, the moon vehicles from the Captain Scarlet episodes Lunarville 7 and Crater 101. Now those I really would like. Finally, when you've finished constructing your model, you can then move on to the painting. What I tend to do is give my models an undercoat first. So I would spray them either black or white. And like I said, I use the paints from Warhammer Games Workshop. Sometimes you have to spray your models separately before putting them together. This is because there are some bits on your model you may have to paint first and then put together. If you put them together first, you might not be able to get to the bits you want to paint with your paintbrush. And of course you can paint with your paintbrush a certain colour, or you can air spray your models with certain colours. And remember what I said about polystyrene balls, about why you should coat them with PVA glue or papier-mâché? Was because if you try and spray paint a polystyrene object, it disintegrates. The PVA glue will act as a sort of protection. You may have to add maybe 2 or 3 coats though. And don't forget, the larger your model, the more detailing is required. So like some models have like certain paint jobs like stripes or checks. They have like warning symbols like danger, do not enter, or keep out. They also have their like names and identification plates. And of course, most of these models, we want to look like they're made out of metal, not plastic. So you need to add a bit of silver to them. And sometimes use some brown paint to add a little dirt to them. Because remember, these models, they're not meant to be clean. Some of them are meant to be dirty. So that pretty much concludes how to build your model vehicle or building. I hope you guys have found it useful. If you have, do give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell, because in the next video I'll talk about how to set up your scenery for your models. And don't forget guys, you can follow me on my social sites: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever. I'm also on Reddit now. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Over and out.